The first time Noelle Bramwell told a room full of people I wasn't her type, I smiled like I agreed. 3 weeks later, she kissed me in front of almost exactly the same audience. Sabine's housewarming had reached the stage where nobody was technically hungry anymore, yet we were all still standing around her kitchen island eating things directly from serving plates. Her new apartment occupied the second floor of a converted brick building in northeast Portland, with enormous windows, uneven hardwood floors, and the kind of kitchen people described as charming when they weren't the ones trying to fit 6 adults into it. I was attempting to remove a roasted pepper from a piece of flatbread without dropping goat cheese onto my shirt when Noelle appeared beside me. "You know you're allowed to leave food on the plate," she said. "I don't believe in waste. You just removed half the topping." "I believe in selective waste." Noelle took the abandoned pepper from the edge of my plate and ate it. "That's revolting. You were going to throw it away." "I was going to place it discreetly somewhere and pretend it had never existed." Very mature. "I'm 31. I've earned the right to hide vegetables." She smiled. That was how conversations with Noelle usually worked. I would say something mildly unreasonable. She would challenge it. I would make it worse on purpose. We had been doing some version of it for about 5 months. Not dating. Not even friendship, exactly. Sabine had brought Noelle to a trivia night the previous spring, and somehow Noelle and I had kept ending up near each other after that. Birthdays, Sunday lunches, a terrible outdoor movie where the projector failed 20 minutes in, and we all stayed anyway because somebody had brought excellent wine. Noelle was 34, with dark blonde hair that never seemed arranged, even though it always looked good, gray-green eyes, and a face that became more interesting the longer you watched it. She worked 4 days a week as a dental hygienist and claimed this made her uniquely qualified to judge everyone's coffee habits. I worked in procurement for a regional hospital network, which meant I spent much of my life explaining why ordering 1,200 of something was not cheaper if nobody needed 1,200 of it. Our jobs rarely entered our conversations beyond giving us material to complain about. Noelle had other habits I had noticed, despite repeatedly telling myself not to. At Sabine's birthday dinner, she had moved her chair because the only open seat beside me was partially blocked by a coat rack. At trivia night, she remembered I hated sweet cocktails after hearing me mention it once. When I left a rooftop barbecue early because I had a headache, she sent me a message 20 minutes later. "You escaped before Jonah started explaining cryptocurrency again. Coward." I had answered, "Self-preservation is not cowardice." She responded, "He has diagrams now." Nothing dramatic, nothing that justified imagination. But there were enough small things to make me wonder. Noelle had a way of locating me in a room. I had a way of pretending not to notice. At Sabine's housewarming, she spent 10 minutes arguing with me about whether a narrow wooden bench in the hallway was decorative or functional. "It has legs," I said. "People can sit on it." "So can a piano." "A piano has keys." "That is not relevant to whether you can sit on it." "You would make an unbearable witness." "You'd make a worse lawyer." "I'm not a lawyer." "Exactly. You lack commitment." From across the kitchen, Miri Calder lifted her wine glass. "Are you two going to do this all night?" Noelle didn't even turn. "Do what?" "This." Miri gestured between us. "Whatever strange little married couple audition you've been doing for months." I laughed because Miri enjoyed exaggeration and usually deserved to be ignored. Noelle gave her a flat look. Sabine, carrying a stack of small plates, said, "She's not wrong." "She is almost always wrong," I said. "Piper," Miri continued, "you're single." "Thank you for the bulletin." "Noelle is single." Noelle reached for another piece of flatbread. I can see where this thrilling investigation is headed. Jonah Pike, who had been opening another bottle of wine, grinned. I think we all can. Please don't, Noelle said. It was still playful then. I remember that clearly. Nobody was trying to corner her. Nobody knew there was anything to corner. Miri only shrugged. I'm saying you two already act like you're halfway through a date every time you're in the same room. You might as well save everybody the suspense. Noelle answered too quickly. Piper isn't my type. There was a fraction of a second when I thought I had misunderstood her. Then Jonah made a low, amused sound. Miri raised both hands. All right, case dismissed. Sabine gave me an apologetic little wince that made everything worse. I smiled. Of course I did. I even lifted my glass toward Noelle. Devastating, I said. I'll try to rebuild. Noelle laughed, but there was tension in it. Please do. The conversation moved on. That was the whole public disaster. No shouting, no dramatic exit, no humiliation anyone else would probably remember for more than a day. I stayed another hour and a half. I discussed Sabine's new landlord, helped Jonah figure out why the corkscrew had stopped working, and eventually sat on the allegedly decorative hallway bench just to prove a point. Noelle sat beside me for part of that conversation. I moved slightly to give her more room. Only slightly. She noticed. I could tell she noticed because she became unusually quiet for approximately 7 seconds, which for Noelle counted as a prolonged event. But she didn't say anything. Neither did I. The stupid part was that I wasn't hurt because Noelle didn't want me. Women were allowed not to want me. I had survived that information before. What bothered me was realizing I might have invented an entire layer of our interactions. The messages, the remembered drinks, the way she sometimes touched my forearm when she laughed, the fact that she almost always chose the seat beside mine. Maybe that was simply Noelle, affectionate, social, easy. Maybe I had taken ordinary friendliness and promoted it without authorization. That possibility embarrassed me more than rejection would have. So I adjusted. Not dramatically. I didn't block her number or avoid gatherings. I simply stopped assuming there was an unfinished sentence between us. When she sent me a photograph the next afternoon of a coffee shop sign that said, "Oat milk is a personality now," I responded with a thumbs up instead of the paragraph I normally would have written. When she asked whether I was going to Miri's Sunday brunch, I said yes. No teasing, no unnecessary follow-up. 3 days later, at brunch, there was an empty chair beside Noelle. I sat across the table instead. Miri looked between us once. I ignored her. Noelle did not. You hate that chair, she said. I glanced down at the perfectly ordinary chair beneath me. Do I? You complained about it last time. I complain about many things. The back is too straight. It appears I've developed resilience. Sabine covered a smile with her coffee cup. Noelle studied me for a second before turning to the menu. I felt childish. Then I reminded myself, I wasn't punishing her. I was correcting my own interpretation. There was a difference. At least, I believed there was. The brunch passed normally enough, except Noelle tried 3 times to pull me into our usual rhythm, and I gave her polite answers instead. Afterward, while everyone else stood on the sidewalk deciding whether to walk to a nearby market, Noelle caught my sleeve. Are you leaving? I was thinking about it. You usually like the market. I also like my apartment. Piper. Her tone made me stop. Sabine, Miri, and Jonah were already half a block ahead. Noelle tucked her hands into the pockets of her jacket. What did I do? I almost laughed. You're asking me? Yes. Nothing. Don't do that. Do what? Give me the answer people give when the actual answer is something. I considered walking away. Instead, I said, You told an entire room I wasn't your type. Noelle's mouth opened. I continued before she could speak. That's fine. You're allowed to have a type. You're allowed not to be attracted to me. But apparently, I was reading things into this that weren't there, and I'm adjusting accordingly. Her expression changed. Not dramatically. The humor simply disappeared. You weren't reading things that weren't there. That irritated me more than I expected. Then what exactly was I supposed to hear? I shouldn't have said it. But you did. I know. You said it immediately, Noelle. Like Miri had suggested you date a lamp. She shouldn't have been suggesting anything. That isn't the same issue. I know it isn't. She glanced down the street toward our friends, and then back at me. They've done that before. Suggested lamps? A brief smile tried to appear. I didn't help it. Noelle rubbed one thumb over the edge of her coat pocket. The commentary, about whoever I'm talking to, who I should date, what something means. Miri does it mostly because she thinks it's funny, and usually it is. But I hate it. You could tell her that. I should. You could have said, stop discussing my dating life. Yes. You could have said, I don't want to talk about this. Yes. You didn't need to make me the rejection. That landed. I watched it land. Noelle's shoulders dropped slightly. No, she said. I didn't. The anger in me lost some of its structure. She didn't rush to defend herself. Didn't tell me I had misunderstood. Didn't ask why I was so sensitive. I wanted the conversation dead, she said. That was the quickest sentence I could think of, and I used you to end it. I didn't stop to think about what it would sound like to you. It sounded pretty clear. I know. There was no humor now. I'm sorry, Piper. I folded my arms. For embarrassing me? For dismissing you, publicly, when I had privately been doing enough to make the opposite seem possible. That surprised me. Noelle gave a short, unhappy laugh. I'm not completely oblivious. I studied her. There was one question sitting between us, obvious enough that avoiding it would have been ridiculous. So, am I actually not your type? Her face did something complicated. Oh, God. That sounds promising. No, it's just that this is exactly why I hate people discussing my romantic life. I'm not people. No, you're unfortunately the relevant person. I waited. Noelle looked toward the market again, though our friends had disappeared around the corner. Then she said, You're not the kind of woman I usually date. I nodded once. She held up a hand. That sentence has a second half. I'm listening. I usually date women who are louder than I am. That sounds exhausting. It often is. Excellent strategy. Piper, sorry. She fought a smile. Women who flirt immediately, women who make it obvious, women who can walk into a room and become the center of it without trying. And I'm what? You watch the room first. I didn't answer. You're funny when you decide somebody has earned it. You take a while to decide whether you like people. You don't perform being interested. That's a very polite way of saying I'm suspicious. You are deeply suspicious. Fair. And I've been attracted to you since sometime around Miri's birthday. I stared at her despite my general objection to staring as a communication style. That was 4 months ago. 5. You counted? I know what month her birthday is. Convenient recovery. Noelle smiled properly then, but I wasn't ready to let humor carry us out of the conversation. So, when you said I wasn't your type, I meant I wanted Miri to stop. That isn't what the words meant. No. She stepped closer, though not close enough to turn the apology into something romantic. I was careless because I was uncomfortable. You got embarrassed because I didn't want to be embarrassed. That wasn't fair. It was annoyingly difficult to stay angry at someone who apologized accurately. I accept the apology, I said. Noelle nodded. Thank you. That doesn't mean everything goes back to normal. I know. And I don't particularly want to be somebody you act interested in privately while correcting the record whenever anyone notices. I don't want that either. Good. A few seconds passed. Then Noelle said, For the record, I would like to take you out. I almost smiled. Now? Not this second. You look like you might use a bread knife on me. We're standing on a sidewalk. I'm sure you could source one. I do work in procurement. There she is. I rolled my eyes, but I was smiling. Noelle noticed and had the decency not to look triumphant. Think about it, she said. I will. We walked to the market together, not touching, not pretending the previous week hadn't happened. But when we found the others near a flower stall, Noelle didn't drift away from me as if proximity suddenly required explanation. I noticed that too. I thought about her invitation for 2 days, partly because I didn't want to reward good apologizing with immediate access to me, partly because the idea of going on an actual date with Noelle made me unexpectedly nervous. On Tuesday evening, I sent her a message. Thursday, 1 drink. You are not permitted to mention teeth. Her response arrived almost immediately. Cruel, but acceptable. Then another. Does this mean you're my type now, or am I yours? I wrote, Don't ruin your progress. She sent a laughing face. Thursday lasted 4 hours. The drink became dinner because neither of us had eaten. Dinner became a walk because the restaurant closed before we ran out of things to say. Nothing monumental happened. We argued about whether dogs understood embarrassment. Noelle told me her younger brother had once tried to become a professional magician for 6 months. I admitted I owned 3 nearly identical black jackets because each one was appropriate for a slightly different temperature range. That is the least surprising thing I've ever learned about you, she said. You own 6 pairs of white sneakers. They're different. So are the jackets. They're literally black jackets. You're beginning to understand. When she walked me to my car, we stood there for long enough that a kiss would have made sense. She didn't try. Neither did I. The tension was obvious, but I didn't want our first kiss to become the shortcut that replaced the conversation we had just begun having. Apparently, neither did she. I had a good time, Noelle said. So did I. Does that mean I'm allowed a second date? You can submit a request. Procurement joke? Unfortunately. I liked you better when you were offended. No, you didn't. Noelle's smile softened. No, she said. I really didn't. That sentence stayed with me all the way home. A week later, Jonah hosted game night. Sabine arrived with 2 pizzas. Miri brought wine. I brought a dessert nobody ate until nearly midnight. Noelle arrived 10 minutes after I did. There was no plan to announce anything. We weren't anything that required announcing. We had been on 2 dates. She had kissed my cheek once outside my apartment after the second, which was both sweet and aggravating. That evening, though, there was a new awareness between us. Every time our knees touched beneath the coffee table, I knew it. Every time she made a joke and checked whether I was laughing, I knew that too. Halfway through a card game, Miri finally noticed. Her eyes narrowed. Oh. I immediately disliked the sound. Noelle did too. No, she said. I didn't say anything. You said, oh. That's technically something, Jonah pointed out. Miri ignored him. Are you two? No interviews, Noelle said. Sabine laughed. I glanced at Noelle. She was smiling, but I recognized the defensive edge now. I understood it differently than I would have before. Miri raised her glass. Fine, I'm just impressed. Last I heard, Piper wasn't your type. The room went briefly still. I could have rescued Noelle. I nearly did. Then she turned toward me. Not toward Miri. Toward me. Can I correct something? Her voice was quiet enough that the others probably heard only the words, not what they contained. I did. My pulse jumped. You sure? Noelle's expression was steady. Yes. I held her gaze for another second. Then I said, Go ahead. She moved closer, slowly enough that I could have changed my mind, slowly enough that there was no question what she was asking. Her hand settled lightly against my jaw. Then she kissed me. The first contact was almost restrained, warm, intentional. No performance in it at all, despite the 4 people watching. I touched the side of her waist and kissed her back. That was when restraint became considerably less convincing. Noelle smiled against my mouth. I heard Jonah mutter, Well. Miri whispered something that sounded like, I knew it, before Sabine shushed her. I barely registered either of them. Noelle's thumb moved once along my cheek. When we separated, she remained close enough that I could see the small line that appeared beside her mouth when she was trying not to grin. Correction submitted, she said. I laughed. Across the table, Jonah raised his hands. I have no comment. That may be your greatest achievement, I told him. Miri opened her mouth. Noelle pointed at her without looking away from me. Think very carefully. Miri closed it. For perhaps 30 seconds. Then she said, I just want it entered into the record that No, Sabine, Jonah, Noelle, and I said together. That made everyone laugh. The game resumed badly. Noelle's knee stayed against mine beneath the table. An hour later, when I followed her into Jonah's kitchen to help carry empty glasses, I caught her wrist. She turned. You know kissing me in front of them doesn't automatically fix what happened. I know. No defensiveness, no disappointment. She set the glasses down. I didn't do it because I thought it would. Why did you do it? Because I wanted to kiss you. Because you wanted me to kiss you. And because for once, I didn't mind them knowing what the answer was. That was better than a grand explanation. I released her wrist. No regrets? About kissing you? About the audience? Noelle glanced toward the living room, where Miri was loudly accusing Jonah of cheating at a game nobody fully understood. Ask me again when they start requesting updates. I smiled. That sounds ominous. You have no idea. She was right. The kiss changed something between us, but not in the magical way kisses were supposed to change things in stories. It didn't make us suddenly compatible. It didn't settle whether we wanted the same kind of relationship. It simply removed the least interesting question. We wanted each other. Now we had to discover what came with that. If you'd like the fuller, more intimate, and uncensored version of this story, you can find it on my Patreon page through the link in the description. Our third date was breakfast. That happened because our second attempt at dinner stretched until almost 1 in the morning, after which Noelle informed me that if she went home without eating again before sleep, she would wake up medically unreasonable. I told her I didn't think that was a diagnosis. She said I wasn't qualified to disagree. So we found a 24-hour diner with sticky menus and coffee strong enough to remove paint. At 12:47 in the morning, Noelle stole half my hash browns. You ordered toast. I've evolved. You've stolen. Language shapes reality, Piper. That explains a lot about you. She smiled around a bite. By then I had learned that Noelle hated mushrooms, slept with one foot outside the blanket, no matter how cold it was, and had an irrational dislike of people who stopped directly inside doorways. She had learned that I alphabetized spices, but not books. Became disproportionately angry when people used speakerphone in public, and could not fold a fitted sheet despite several online tutorials. These were not romantic revelations. They were better. Romance was easy, while everything remained hypothetical. Ordinary details were where another person became real. A week later, we wandered through a used bookstore after lunch, each independently choosing things the other would hate. Noelle handed me a 900-page historical biography. For your bedside table. I'd rather sleep. You work in hospital procurement. I assumed joy was already optional. I pulled a brightly illustrated self-help book from a display. This seems right for you. She read the title. Boundaries for People Who Think Sarcasm Counts as Communication. That feels targeted. I don't know what you mean. You're enjoying this far too much. You're not my usual type. Noelle stared at me. I managed to hold a straight face for 3 seconds before laughing. She took the book from my hand and returned it to the shelf. You get one. One what? One joke about that sentence. I've already made several. Then you're in debt. That's not how limits work. It is now. Later, outside the store, she caught my hand. There was no audience that mattered. She linked our fingers and kept walking. That affected me more than the public kiss had. I didn't tell her. Not then. We did not immediately become girlfriends. For several weeks, neither of us used a word more specific than dating. I liked that. There was room to decide. Noelle spent a Sunday afternoon at my apartment, while I assembled a narrow shelf I had ordered online. She sat on the floor reading the instructions aloud in a falsely solemn voice. Insert bolt C into panel F. That is panel E. No, it isn't. It has a sticker. The sticker is upside down. The panel is upside down. Noelle examined it. Interesting accusation. Move. You're very controlling around furniture. You're actively making this harder. I'm building character. I already have character. Debatable. 20 minutes later, we realized I had attached the back panel backward. Noelle laughed so hard she had to sit against the wall. I considered asking her to leave. Instead, I kissed her. It was our 4th kiss, and the first one that happened because I was too amused to resist her. That became one of my favorite categories. There were other discoveries. Noelle was more social than I was, but required strange pockets of silence afterward. She could spend 6 hours surrounded by people, then come home and barely speak for 40 minutes. I preferred smaller doses of socializing, but recovered quickly. She cooked by improvisation. I cooked by following recipes as though deviation might trigger legal consequences. She was chronically 5 minutes late. I considered 5 minutes late evidence of moral decline. Our first actual disagreement happened because she changed dinner plans after I had already left my apartment. "It's 2 blocks away from the original restaurant," she said over the phone. "That isn't the point." I'm beginning to think "that isn't the point" is your favorite sentence. You could have told me before I left. I decided 30 seconds ago. Then the original plan was still functional. The original restaurant has a 40-minute wait. We had a reservation. I forgot to make it. Silence. Noelle said, "Ah. Yes. That is more my fault than I initially presented." Significantly. "I'm sorry." "Thank you." She paused. "Still coming?" "Yes." "Are you going to be annoyed when you arrive?" "Almost certainly." "Can I buy your forgiveness with dumplings?" "You can begin negotiations." She did. The dumplings helped. Another time, I was the one who lost. Noelle told me I had a terrible habit of answering rhetorical complaints with solutions. "I'm not asking you to redesign my morning," she said, after complaining about traffic. "You said you leave at the worst possible time." "I know. So leave 12 minutes earlier." "I don't want to leave 12 minutes earlier." "Then the traffic will continue." "Yes." "So what response are you hoping for?" "Something like, 'That sounds annoying.'" "But you can fix it." "Piper." "What?" She laughed despite herself. "This is what dating you is like?" "You knew I worked in procurement." "I thought that meant you bought things." "It means I prevent disasters." "You are currently creating one." I learned to say, "That sounds annoying." Not every time. Enough. The friend group, meanwhile, became fascinated. For the first 2 weeks after the kiss, I enjoyed it. Miri sent me a message after our first official dinner. "Are you alive?" I responded, "Unfortunately." She wrote, "Was it romantic?" I sent, "There were plates." She replied with 6 irritated emojis. Sabine was subtler, but not much. At brunch, she glanced at Noelle's hand resting against the back of my chair and smiled into her coffee. Jonah announced he was accepting formal apologies from everyone who had mocked his prediction that we would eventually become unbearable. "You never made that prediction," I told him. "I thought it privately." "That isn't a prediction. That's a thought." "History remembers results." Noelle pointed at him. "This is why I don't tell you people things." At first, we both laughed. I had spent several days feeling foolish after Noelle's public dismissal. Now, nobody could possibly think I had imagined the attraction. I would be lying if I said I didn't enjoy that. When Noelle sat beside me, I noticed people noticing. When she touched my back while passing behind my chair, I noticed that too. It reassured some petty part of me I preferred not to examine too closely. Noelle tolerated the attention. Sometimes she even participated. When Miri asked who had initiated the first real date, Noelle pointed at me. "Piper." I corrected her. I sent 1 text. "That is initiation." "You had already asked me out." "Which you ignored for 48 hours. I considered. You staged an internal tribunal. That's still consideration. But the questions didn't stay harmless forever. They multiplied. At a Saturday lunch, Miri asked whether Noelle had a drawer at my apartment yet. No, I said. Noelle said, "What?" "A drawer," Miri repeated. "You know, relationship territory." "We've been dating 6 weeks," Noelle said. So? "So I still have a home." Jonah leaned over his plate. "She has a toothbrush there, though." Noelle turned to me. "Why does Jonah know that?" I laughed. "He doesn't. He's guessing." "I was guessing," Jonah confirmed. But that reaction was informative. Noelle sighed. The next weekend, Sabine asked whether we were official. Noelle said, "Officially eating lunch?" Sabine smiled. "You know what I mean." "I do." "And?" Noelle picked up her glass. "And I'm not submitting documentation." I laughed with everyone else. But later I asked her about it. We were walking toward my car. "Are we?" "Are we what?" "Official." Noelle stopped. Her expression immediately softened. "If you're asking me, yes." "You didn't want to say it in there." "No." "Why?" "Because you were sitting 4 feet away and they were asking me to define our relationship like you weren't part of it." That answer made sense. More than sense. I liked it. "So you're my girlfriend?" Noelle smiled. "If you'll have me." "I'll review the application." "You're impossible." I kissed her before she could continue. For a while, that distinction worked. What was ours, we discussed with each other. What was harmless, we let the group joke about. But the group didn't know where the line was because we hadn't told them. Noelle, especially, hadn't told them. She kept trying humor first. When Jonah asked who had said "I love you" first before either of us had said it at all, Noelle replied, "Our attorney has advised us not to comment." When Miri asked whether we had slept over at each other's apartments, Noelle said, "I'm worried about how invested you are in my REM cycle." When Sabine pointed out that we had arrived separately to dinner and asked whether that meant anything, Noelle said, "It means Piper owns a car." Everyone laughed. But I started noticing the edge beneath the jokes. One evening, after Miri asked a question about whether we spent every weekend together, Noelle finally said, "I love you, but I'm not discussing that." Miri blinked. Then she nodded. "Fair." The conversation moved on. I was proud of Noelle. That was the healthier response. She hadn't rejected me to create privacy. She had simply created privacy. I understood that, intellectually. The problem was that feelings were often slower than intelligence. Once Noelle started setting boundaries, she did it more often. She stopped answering questions about where we spent the night. She stopped telling the group which dates we had planned. Sometimes she sat beside Sabine instead of me, because they were already talking when I arrived. Sometimes she entered a restaurant 10 minutes before I did, because our schedules were different. Sometimes she left before me. Sometimes she kissed me hello. Sometimes she didn't. None of that was wrong. I knew that. But there were moments when the original sentence came back anyway. Piper isn't my type. It didn't return as a full memory, more like a small irritation beneath the skin. I would see Noelle become private and wonder whether privacy was becoming distance. Then I would feel ridiculous for wondering, so I said nothing, which, in retrospect, was our first shared mistake. Noelle was also saying nothing. Our private relationship was good, very good. That made the uncertainty easier to dismiss. She started keeping coffee at her apartment that I actually liked, instead of the aggressively dark roast she drank. I kept sparkling water for her because she went through it at a rate I considered economically irresponsible. She met my older sister Lydia over dinner. Lydia liked her almost immediately, which was inconvenient because my sister usually required months before approving of anyone. Afterward, I accused Noelle of campaigning. I was charming. You were strategic. I brought dessert. Exactly. That's just manners. You asked Lydia about her garden. She mentioned it. You hate gardening. I don't hate hearing about it. You asked follow-up questions. Noelle smiled. Maybe I wanted your sister to like me. The admission quieted me. We were standing in my kitchen. I reached for her hand. She does. Good. You care? Unfortunately. That sounds serious. It's getting inconvenient. I kissed her. Noelle's arm slid around my waist. By then, we knew each other's rhythms. The way she smiled right before a kiss when she was trying not to. The way I tended to touch the back of her neck when I wanted her closer. We had been sleeping together for several weeks, but the night that stayed with me was quieter than our first. Noelle had come over after a long day, tired enough that she stood in my doorway with her bag hanging from one hand and said, "I have very little personality available." I require none. That sounds threatening. I made soup. Oh, you may have soup without performing. She stepped inside. Marry me? No. Understandable. We ate on the couch. Noelle leaned against me with her feet tucked beneath her. We watched half of a terrible movie about a detective who seemed legally prohibited from making sensible decisions. Eventually, Noelle said, "If she goes into that basement alone, I'm leaving." She's obviously going into the basement. I can't support her anymore. The detective went into the basement. Noelle groaned and buried her face against my shoulder. I laughed. When she lifted her head, we were close enough that the joke simply dissolved. I kissed her. Slowly at first. She kissed me back, with the lazy warmth of someone who already knew she was welcome. There was no rush in it, no uncertainty. Her hand slipped beneath the hem of my sweater and settled against my waist. I touched her cheek. The movie continued unwatched behind us. Eventually, we moved toward the bedroom, shedding layers between kisses and leaving them in an undignified path across the floor. Nothing about the night felt like proving anything. That was what I remembered most. Noelle laughed when I nearly walked into the bedroom door because I was kissing her instead of looking where I was going. I told her not to ruin the mood. She said, "You did that yourself." Then she kissed me again. Later, under the covers, she lay on her side with one leg tangled through mine. Her hair was a mess. I touched a strand away from her face. Noelle's eyes were nearly closed. "This is nice," she murmured. "Very eloquent." I told you, limited personality. You've had several hours to recover. Used it all elsewhere. I smiled. She reached for my hand under the blanket. No audience. No one knowing except us. And I felt completely secure. That should have taught me more than it did. The next morning, Noelle made coffee while wearing my t-shirt. I leaned against the kitchen counter and watched her open the wrong cabinet 3 times. "You know where the mugs are." "I know approximately where the mugs are." "You've been here dozens of times." "I don't learn through repetition." "That is literally how humans learn." Noelle finally found the mugs. "You're very critical before caffeine." "You're in my kitchen." "That sounds territorial." "It is. She handed me coffee. Better? I took a sip. Yes. Good. Then she kissed my forehead and returned to the stove. That was the kind of thing nobody else saw. I loved her for it, before I had said the words. A month later, I told her. Not during a beautiful dinner, not during sex, not after a dramatic conversation. We were in the grocery store. Noelle had placed an enormous bag of kettle chips into the cart. I removed it. She returned it. I removed it again. We do not need that size. It's economical. You will eat all of it in 2 days. Then it's appropriately sized. You complain every time you eat too many. That is future Noelle's problem. I'm dating future Noelle. Then you can comfort her. I put the bag back in the cart. You are ridiculous. You love me. I do. Noelle stopped. I stopped. A woman pushing a cart behind us had to steer around us. Noelle's expression lost every trace of teasing. You do? I felt exposed for about half a second. Then I realized I didn't mind. Yes. She moved closer. I love you too. Good. Good? We're blocking the aisle, Noelle laughed. Then she kissed me beside a display of canned tomatoes. It wasn't cinematic. It was perfect. We told nobody. Not deliberately. We just didn't. For 4 days, the words belonged to us. Then Miri asked over dinner, "Have either of you said it yet?" Noelle immediately answered, "That's ours." Miri paused. I did too. Noelle's hand was resting near mine on the table. She didn't touch me. She didn't need to. Miri nodded. All right. No joke, no pushing. Something about the moment made me unexpectedly emotional. Noelle had protected the private thing without denying it existed. That was growth. I knew it was. I told myself I was fine. Mostly I was. But there were other moments. At one gathering, Noelle spent most of an evening across the room talking to Sabine about a hiking trip they were planning with several other friends. I knew about the trip. I had been invited, and declined, because sleeping outdoors was one of the many ways humanity had chosen to misunderstand progress. Still, I caught myself watching Noelle, wondering whether she would come sit beside me. She didn't. Not until nearly the end. When she finally crossed the room, she handed me a glass of water. You've had 2 wines and nothing else. I'm fine. Drink. I took the glass. You've been busy. Noelle glanced back toward Sabine. We were comparing routes. I gathered. She studied me. Everything okay? Of course. That was my mistake. Not a large one, but a real one. She had asked. I had lied. A few weeks after that, the first serious crack appeared. We were at Jonah's apartment for dinner. Only the 5 of us. Noelle had arrived before me. When I walked in, she was sitting beside Miri at the dining table, laughing about something. She waved. I waved back. Nobody moved seats. Why would they? I sat beside Sabine. Dinner was easy, normal, until Jonah started complaining about his cousin, who had posted details of a breakup online. I don't understand putting everything on the internet, he said. Like, congratulations, now 700 strangers know Kevin kept your air fryer. Miri laughed. Maybe the air fryer mattered. Then tell your therapist, tell your mother, tell the police if necessary. Why am I involved? Sabine looked at Noelle. You're quiet. Noelle shrugged.
I broadly agree. Mary groaned. Of course you do. You'd classify your own birthday as confidential. That's because you people ask questions like federal investigators. Jonah pointed his fork at her.
You've always been weird about people knowing who you're dating. Noelle's smile thinned. I recognized the moment. She didn't want the conversation. Old Noelle might have deflected by making whoever she was dating the punchline. New Noelle said, I just don't think being close to somebody means everyone else gets the minutes. That was reasonable. Completely reasonable. Then Miri said, Where does that come from, though? Noelle opened her mouth. I answered first. It happened faster than thought. She grew up with a mother who treated everything as family news. Noelle went still. I heard myself continuing. Not much. 2 sentences, that was all. She'd tell relatives things Noelle had asked her not to share, so now she hates feeling like somebody else gets to decide what becomes public. Silence. The story itself was not dramatic. Noelle's mother wasn't cruel. No family trauma. No secret that could ruin anything. Noelle had told me months earlier that when she was 17, her mother had casually told aunts, cousins, and neighbors about Noelle's first breakup, despite Noelle asking her not to. Later, after Noelle came out, her mother had been supportive but similarly incapable of understanding that support did not require updating half the extended family. Noelle loved her mother. They had a good relationship now, but it was part of why she hated feeling narrated. She had told me that one night in bed, softly, with her face turned toward mine in the dark. I had never considered it a secret. That was the problem. Noelle set her fork down. I told you that because it was yours to know. Her voice was calm. Not theirs. My stomach tightened. Miri immediately said, Noelle, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked. Noelle shook her head. This isn't about you. I felt defensive before I had decided to. I didn't tell them anything terrible. No, and they already know you hate people discussing your dating life. They didn't know why. It was relevant to the conversation. Noelle stared at me. So? The question irritated me because I didn't have a good answer. So I wasn't trying to expose you. I know. Then why are you making it sound like I betrayed some enormous confidence? I'm not making it enormous. Her restraint made my defensiveness worse. I'm saying it wasn't yours to distribute. Nobody at the table moved. I hated that we were arguing in front of them. I hated even more that I was aware of the irony. You're overreacting. Noelle's face closed. Not dramatically. Enough. Sabine murmured, Maybe we should... No, Noelle said. Then to me, Don't do that. Do what? Decide the size of something after I tell you it bothered me. That sounded uncomfortably familiar. My pride reached for the oldest weapon available. You're the one who told everyone I wasn't your type. The second the words left my mouth, I wanted them back. Noelle's expression changed from angry to hurt. That's what this is? No. It sounds like it. I'm saying you created this whole problem by acting like being seen with me was something you had to defend yourself against. I apologized for that. I know. Repeatedly. I know. I changed how I handled it. I know. Her voice sharpened. Then what exactly am I supposed to do with the fact that you keep bringing it back whenever I want something private? I looked around the table. Everyone was staring at their plates. Humiliation burned through me. I'm not doing this here.
Noelle let out a short laugh with no humor in it.
That's interesting.
Don't.
No, Piper. It is.
She lowered her voice.
You wanted me to stop treating privacy like rejection. I did. But now you're treating privacy like something I have to apologize for.
I'm not.
You are.
That isn't fair.
You watch me at every gathering.
I went still. Noelle continued before I could interrupt.
You notice where I sit, whether I kiss you hello, whether I leave with you, whether I answer Miri's questions.
My face became hot. You could have said something.
Yes.
That stopped me. Noelle looked down briefly.
Yes, I should have.
The anger in her voice changed.
I should have told you weeks ago that the questions were getting to me. I kept thinking you'd notice because you know how I feel about it, and that wasn't fair either.
Miri shifted uncomfortably. Noelle ignored her.
But I cannot spend the rest of this relationship proving I want you by turning us into public property.
I stared at the table. There it was, the actual wound. And the terrible thing was that I understood her. I understood her while still feeling hurt. I don't need public property, I said.
What do you need?
I don't know.
That's the problem.
That's not only my problem.
I just said it wasn't. Then stop talking like I'm the only one who got this wrong.
Noelle's jaw tightened.
I'm not.
You let it build until you were angry.
Yes.
You sat there every time someone asked questions and made jokes, then apparently went home resenting it.
Not resenting you.
How would I know? Noelle pushed her chair back.
Because I loved you in every private part of our life.
The past tense hit harder than she probably intended. She heard it too. Her face changed.
I love you, she corrected.
Nobody breathed. I wanted to believe that should have been enough to solve everything. Instead, I said, I think I'm going home. Noelle nodded once.
Maybe that's best.
She didn't follow me. I didn't want her to. At least that was what I told myself until I reached my car. I sat behind the wheel for several minutes without starting it. There were messages from Sabine and Miri before I got home. I didn't open either. Noelle didn't send one.
That hurt. Then I admitted that if she had, I would probably have complained that she was trying to fix things too quickly. There was no version of the evening that let me keep all my dignity. So I stopped trying. At home, I changed clothes, washed my face, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The argument replayed itself. Not the good lines. The embarrassing ones. You're the one who told everyone I wasn't your type. I covered my face with both hands. It had been months. Noelle had apologized. Not once, casually, properly. She had asked permission before kissing me in front of everyone. She had dated me openly, held my hand in public, met my sister, told me she loved me in a grocery store. She had never denied me again. And still, some part of me had kept the original rejection as evidence. Not evidence that she didn't love me, evidence that she might stop showing it. That was worse, because it meant every time Noelle stopped performing affection for other people, I quietly checked whether the old version of her was returning. I hadn't accused her. I hadn't created scenes. I had considered myself reasonable because my fear had remained mostly silent. But silence did not make it harmless. I thought about the night she first told Miri, "That's ours." I had loved that moment. Then later, Without noticing the contradiction, I had begun wanting external confirmation again. I had made visibility into insurance. If everyone saw Noelle wanting me, then I could never feel foolish the way I had at Sabine's housewarming. That wasn't fair to her. It also wasn't fair to me, because I meant I had never fully allowed her apology to become history. But Noelle was not innocent either. That mattered. Not because I needed to divide blame evenly. Because love did not improve through pretending one person's self-awareness erased the other person's behavior. Noelle had been uncomfortable for weeks. She had said almost nothing to me. She had expected me to interpret boundaries I couldn't see. Then she had arrived at the argument carrying grievances I didn't know existed. That was not communication. Two truths could coexist. I had been demanding reassurance without naming it. She had been withdrawing information without explaining why. Neither of us had lied exactly. We had simply become very skilled at not saying the necessary sentence. For the next 3 days, we did not see each other. We exchanged 2 messages. The first came from Noelle the morning after the argument. I don't want to solve this by text. I also don't want silence to feel punitive. I'm here. I just think we should both cool down. I read it 6 times, then responded, Agreed. I'm here too. The second came 2 days later. Tomorrow? I answered, yes. She suggested a cafe halfway between our apartments. Ordinary. Neutral. We met at 11 on Sunday. Noelle was already there when I arrived. For once, I was 2 minutes late. She noticed. Are you all right? I'm experimenting with moral decline. A small smile. Dangerous. I sat across from her. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Noelle said, I'm sorry. I opened my mouth. She lifted one hand. Let me do mine first. I nodded. She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. I'm sorry for what I said at Sabine's housewarming. I know I already apologized, but it matters again because clearly it stayed inside the relationship longer than either of us admitted. I listened. I used you to protect myself from attention I didn't want. I made you look rejected so I wouldn't have to feel exposed. Her mouth tightened. That was selfish. I didn't rescue her from the word. She continued. And lately, I've been doing a different version of the same bad habit. I frowned slightly. I stopped making jokes at your expense, but I still waited until I was frustrated before telling you I felt crowded. She looked directly at me. I thought because you knew my history, you should automatically know when something crossed a line. I didn't. I know. I would have listened. I know that too. That hurt in a useful way. Noelle looked down. I didn't give you the opportunity. I rubbed my thumb along the paper sleeve around my cup. My turn? Yes. I shouldn't have told them about your mother. Noelle nodded. I genuinely didn't think it was private. I believe you. But once you said it was, I shouldn't have argued with you about whether it deserved to be. No. I was embarrassed. I know. And then I used the oldest thing I could find to make you the bad guy. Noelle said nothing. I forced myself to keep going. I kept needing everyone else to see that you wanted me, because part of me still remembered when you told them you didn't. The sentence sounded worse aloud, more vulnerable, more accurate. Noelle's eyes softened, but she didn't interrupt. I thought I was over it because I wasn't angry anymore, but I wasn't over the feeling that I had looked stupid. You didn't. I felt like I did. I know. So every time you touched me in front of them, or sat beside me, or said something that made it obvious we were together, part of me relaxed. Noelle took a slow breath. And when I stopped, I noticed. I could tell. I'm sorry. She rubbed one fingertip against the edge of her cup. I'm not ashamed of us. I know. Do you? The question was gentle. That made it harder. I considered it carefully. Yes, I said. I do know. I just don't always feel it fast enough. Noelle nodded. That makes sense. It doesn't mean you have to compensate forever. No. I don't want that. Good. We sat in silence for a moment. Outside the window, a man walked past carrying a potted tree almost as tall as he was. Neither of us commented. That was how serious the conversation was. Then Noelle said, I need us to be able to exist around our friends without every small thing becoming evidence. Evidence of what? That we're okay. I thought about it. I agree. And I need to tell you when I'm getting uncomfortable, instead of assuming you should detect it from my facial expressions. That would help. I thought my facial expressions were excellent. They are often hostile and nonspecific. Noelle laughed. The sound loosened something in me. Fair, I smiled. But I need something too. Tell me. Privacy can't become vagueness. Her smile disappeared. I continued. If something changes between us, I need you to tell me. I don't want to spend weeks discovering you were bothered only after you've reached the point of anger. I can do that. And if someone asks you something you don't want to answer, I'm fine with none of your business. Noelle smiled slightly. Good. But if the question is something about us that actually needs an answer it to me later. I can do that too. I hesitated. And I'll stop using other people as a scoreboard. Noelle reached across the table. Her hand stopped halfway. Not assuming, asking. I placed mine in it. Her fingers closed around mine. Neither of us smiled for several seconds. Then she said, Are we okay? I think we're repairing. That sounds extremely procurement. It means you're still under contract. Romantic. I try. Noelle squeezed my hand. I love you. I love you too. We didn't kiss in the cafe. That felt right. The reconciliation wasn't a return to the beginning. It was not supposed to erase the argument. We left separately because Noelle needed groceries and I had laundry waiting at home. Before she walked toward her car, she touched my arm. Dinner Tuesday? At mine? Yes. You're cooking. That seems punitive. It's accountability, she laughed. Fine. Tuesday, she made pasta and burned the garlic. We ate it anyway. Nothing changed instantly after that. That was one of the reasons I trusted the change. Noelle became better at telling me when she was nearing her limit. At Mary's birthday, after the third relationship question of the evening, she leaned toward me and murmured, I'm about 10 minutes from becoming unpleasant. I smiled. Want to leave? Not yet. Want me to redirect? Yes. So when Jonah asked whether we planned to travel together that winter, I said, Noelle has recently developed strong opinions about public transit. Ask her about bus lanes. She glared at me.
You monster! Jonah immediately took the bait. 30 minutes later, Noelle found me in the kitchen. That was cruel. Effective. Jonah talked at me about urban planning for half an hour. You requested intervention. I requested mercy. Different department. She kissed my cheek. Thank you.
I got better too. One evening, Noelle spent nearly an entire party talking with people other than me. I noticed. Of course I noticed. Then I noticed something else. I was having a good time anyway. At some point, I crossed the room to refill my drink and passed behind her chair. My fingers brushed briefly over her shoulder. Noelle reached back without interrupting her conversation and squeezed my hand once. That was all. I didn't check whether anyone had seen. Several months after Sabine's housewarming, we ended up back at her apartment. The narrow wooden bench still sat in the hallway. I sat on it immediately. Sabine pointed. Don't start. I've proven my case. You proved you can sit on wood. That was always the case. Noelle came in behind me, carrying a bottle of wine. She's been unbearable about this for months. You support me privately, I told her. I absolutely do not. Mary appeared from the kitchen. Oh, good, you're both here. That tone worries me, Noelle said. It shouldn't. It always should. Jonah arrived 10 minutes later, and soon we were back around the same kitchen island where the entire ridiculous chain of events had started. Sabine had made too much food again. Miri had opinions about everyone's lives again. Jonah was explaining a documentary nobody had asked about. At some point, Miri asked whether Noelle and I were planning to move in together. Noelle didn't tense. She didn't joke at my expense. She simply said, "None of your business." Miri placed a hand over her chest. I asked a loving question. You asked an invasive question with loving branding. I laughed. Not the brittle laugh I had used the first night. A real one. Miri looked at me. You're allowing this? I'm enjoying it. Traitor. The conversation moved on. Noelle stayed beside me for another 10 minutes. Then Sabine pulled her into a discussion near the window. I ended up on the couch, listening to Jonah explain why he had deleted 3 dating apps in 1 week. Noelle was across the room. We weren't touching. We weren't even in the same conversation. And I didn't need to measure the distance. Later, dinner spread us around Sabine's table. Noelle sat 2 seats away. At some point beneath the table, her foot bumped mine. Accidental at first, then deliberate. I glanced toward her. She was listening to Miri tell a story. Noelle didn't turn. I moved my foot against hers once in reply. A few minutes later, her hand appeared beneath the edge of the table between our chairs. I slipped mine into it. Nobody noticed. Or maybe they did. It didn't matter. Noelle's fingers tightened once around mine. Then she let go to reach for her glass. After dessert, she found me near the hallway. "Want to leave early?" I checked the time. "We've only been here 3 hours." "Yes." "Are you socially depleted?" "Profoundly." "I thought you liked these people." "I do. That's why I stayed 3 hours." I smiled. "Your place or mine?" "Mine. I bought the sparkling water you like." "You mean the sparkling water you like?" "I like that you like it." That was suspiciously sweet. I'm exhausted. My defenses are down. I reached for my coat. Noelle held it while I slipped my arms into the sleeves. Behind us, Miri called, "Are you two leaving together?" Noelle turned. "Yes." Miri waited.
Noelle waited back. Finally, Mary said, "That's all I get?" "That's everything you need," I laughed. Noelle opened the apartment door. Outside, the hallway was cool and quiet. I stepped through. She followed me. No correction, no demonstration, no audience required. Halfway down the stairs, Noelle caught my hand. I let her, and we went home.